All right, folks. So you might be thinking, well, what makes you qualified to talk about this, Prashant? So let's talk a bit about myself. Everyone gets to listen to me talk about myself. My favorite. Okay, so I'm Prashant, one of the first few engineering manager hires at Zillow to join completely remotely during the pandemic. It was a very surreal experience. It's like everything is the same. Here's a new laptop. The old company laptop goes away, and nothing changed around me except it's a new job. So we'll talk about some strategies that I have personally found useful. So I have employees across US and Canada in different time zones, and joining remotely to join a new team, new company, ramping up was not easy. But first, we're going to do an audience participation exercise. All right. So before we get to that, what are we going to talk about? We'll talk about strategies for operating remotely as a new engineering manager, joining a team or a company. Could be that you are joining a new team in the same company. Still, you have new people that you have to build a connection with. We'll talk about methods to help build the connections and foster a team culture that's welcoming and collaborative while being completely remote, which means you cannot just tap someone on the shoulder and be like, hey, let's go grab a coffee. They will go to their own kitchen if you do that. We will also talk about something that's very important and doesn't really get talked about a lot, which is how do you avoid the feeling of sustained isolation as a manager and cultivate a sense of belonging for yourself in the team and the company while working remotely. As a manager, you're always expected to show up, but you also have to practice some self-care. We will not talk about company-wide onboarding plans, which whenever you join, yes, there's a structured onboarding plan that helps you learn how the company operates. All right, so in this show of hands exercise, once your hand is up, please keep it up. Feel free to switch hands, that's completely fine. How many of you have joined a new team or a new company completely remotely in a leadership or management position? All right, that's like 1/3 of the room. Keep your hands up, keep your hands up. I see people lowering their hands. Keep your hand raised. Once your hand is up, it stays up. For the whole talk, no, just kidding, just for a minute. How many of you have been involved in helping onboard a manager or a leader who joined your team or group remotely? Keep your hands up. People are lowering hands. How many of you have faced challenges during your own remote onboarding process or in helping others onboard in a remote leadership or managerial role? All right. How many of you think at some point in the future you will join a new team remotely in a manager or leadership position, or you will help a new manager onboard effectively while remote to your team? So in any of these 4 questions, if you raise your hands, I want you to raise them completely up. All right, look around you. Feel free to stand up and look around you if you want to. This is your tribe. That's one of the first takeaway. You can lower your hands now or keep them up if you want to. The first takeaway is that you're not alone in this. As you onboard as a remote engineering manager, it's easy to feel that you're there by yourself. There are people you can use as sounding boards. There are people who are facing similar challenges. You should feel empowered to talk with them, discuss strategies. I'm going to do a bonus show of hands, which is not on the slides. How many of you have remote onboarding completely figured out? If your hand goes up, please come find me afterwards. I really want to talk. Not a single person. So no one has it completely figured out, but that also means you don't have to struggle by yourself. Now, what really worked for me and might work for you, be intentional about how you work. Be intentional about how you choose asynchronous versus synchronous ways of working with your team. Could this meeting have been an email? Have people been in a meeting that was just an informational email? I see some nodding. Similarly, are we having a lot of back and forth conversations on Slack with like a thread with, 87 replies where sometimes it's just easier to get in a room and talk it out. Sometimes things are not translating well. You have to be very intentional in how you communicate. You might remember Tara also mentioned in the morning session on being intentional. You really have to be intentional. You can't let the communication methods happen to you. Ask your team for input and feedback on whether they prefer more asynchronous or more synchronous methods. Like, am I putting a lot of material in Slack and they don't really hear from me at all? Or are they saying like, yeah, you're calling a lot of meetings, maybe dial it back a bit. Ask them for feedback on specific meetings. Could parts of the meeting be asynchronous? So this 1 hour meeting becomes a half an hour meeting and you send an update ahead of time. All of those are strategies you should use. Embrace the remote work culture and processes. What that means is you should walk away from the mindset of, which I'm not saying that you might have, but in case you do, the only way I get work done is by being in meetings. Should not be the mindset that you should have going forward. If you don't have that mindset already, great, you're already there. Understand your team's workflow, project management tools. Ask for guidance, clarification, and this is very important. Ask for explicit feedback from your team, your peers, and your leadership. I could guess what your operating styles are, or what's even better than guessing. I could just ask. Constant feedback will help you figure out what's the right balance for your team, which will differ team to team. Audit your own working methods frequently for the right balance between synchronous and asynchronous work. 60-day and 90-day mark are usually good milestones to do this exercise because by that time you have gotten a feel of how the team is operating and how you are approaching the team. But this is something that you should consider doing at a regular cadence. You should also encourage your team to audit this. One of the exercises I've done with my team in the past is have them look at all meetings they were in the past 2 months and basically try to put them in different categories, like this could have been an email, or this could be shorter, could be divided into like a sync, async, and you'll be surprised how many of the meetings you saw across the team have the common theme of this could be split or this could not be split. Clear communication underpins everything we do. Consider creating a user manual to explicitly outline your operating style, your working style, and communication preferences. This actually is something that when I joined Zillow, the team was already doing, which I did as well, and I found it to be really helpful. Lead by example, share your user manual widely. It's not something you create and then keep on your laptop and then someone has to ask you, can I see your user manual? Put it on Google Drive. Encourage your team to do the same. Practice deliberate and intentional communication. And in a remote world, over-communication is much more preferable over under-communication. Also, if you're looking for a great morale-building event, hint, hint, reading everyone's user manuals as a group is a really great bonding exercise. It helps you get to know each other as people. Team culture, foster a sense of connectedness. Encourage sharing glimpses of your personal life with the team. Maybe create a water cooler Slack channel where you post pictures of your pets. Encourage informal interactions like virtual team building activities, happy hour calls, online games, the usual suspect. It doesn't have to be a pandemic feature. You can continue doing it as we go. Be deliberate about checking in on people. Being remote can easily turn into a superpower here for your team if you leverage the diversity of experiences to build a more connected team. Self-development. Identify the critical skills for success as a remote manager. You won't have impromptu coffee chat or sidebar conversations, so you have to really seek out those opportunities. Invest in training and learning what makes you more effective remotely, and ask your peers, managers, and mentors for help and guidance explicitly. You will have to be really, really deliberate here. Self-motivation. So, the main point of this slide is it's very easy to get discouraged where you're by yourself, on your desk, at your home, trying to manage. You have to acknowledge that, yes, it can be isolating, disengaging, and then you have to address those feelings. Foster out and seek a sense of belonging for yourself within the team and company. Maybe find people who have similar interests. Maybe find people to just have a virtual coffee chat with that you don't work with frequently. Celebrate milestones and achievements, no matter how small. And seek support from a manager or peers when you're facing challenges. Maybe you just need a sounding board. Practice self-care, prioritize your mental health, and maintain a personal work-life balance. Thank you for your time. These are the key takeaways that we talked about. If you take one thing away from this, it's be intentional. Thank you.